Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this press conference with Aaron Finch, captain of Australia. Just a reminder, please, particularly to our Zoom audience, please make sure that your monitors are muted. We'll start with the audience that's here at the stadium, and then we'll try to move on to Zoom if we do have time. Please, can we have maximum 2 questions each? If possible, just give everybody a chance to be able to ask, because I know everybody's pressed for time. We'll start here, and then we'll move on.
Aaron, will you play tomorrow?
Very hopeful to, yeah. We'll have a good hit out this afternoon and give it a solid test out.
So if you had to give a percentage at this moment, what would it be that you will play?
Good question, maybe 70-30, yeah. I'll test it out properly this afternoon to make sure that I'm not hindering the side at all leading into the game, because I think that's the worst possible scenario, is that you leave the guys short out there with one player fewer.
Jeff?
Aaron, you guys know that there's an equation. You've got to win tomorrow, and not just get a win, but win by a lot to try to get ahead of England. Have you talked through the specifics, the maths of that, like what would need to happen if you're batting first, bowling first, and that kind of thing? Not
as a team, we haven't. I've talked through it a little bit with the coach. We went through it this morning briefly, and yeah, like I said last game, you still have to earn the right to be able to push for a net run rate, because the last thing that you want to happen is you push too hard, you compromise the 2 points, and then potentially if something happened in the Sri Lankan England game and you leave yourself vulnerable. But yeah, there's obviously some scenarios there that we need to keep an eye on throughout the game to, if we get in a good position, that we can maximise that.
And so would you look at things like shifting the batting order around, working out changes to the way you might normally go about things?
Yeah, potentially. I think we'll sit down as a strategy group after training today, once we've got a bit more information on, obviously, myself, Tim, David as well. So once we do that, we'll probably go through a few more scenarios. We'll go through all the scenarios, actually, to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's, and just so that we've got a clear mind on what we need to achieve.
Rambo, and then Daniel.
Aaron, you mentioned Tim David. What's his situation? Is he in the similar position to you at the moment?
Very similar. I think the scan results showed very similar things. So, he's in exactly the same boat. He'll get worked out today, and we'll know more during training, I guess, the likelihood of both of us playing, one of us playing, neither of us, whatever that looks like. But exactly the same. You don't want to compromise the team's performance by having a guy go down who comes in with a niggle. So that'll just be one of the things we go through as well, and make sure that it's all ticked off this afternoon.
And does the game situation sort of change your thinking there? Like normally in a tournament, if you're guaranteed of progressing, you'd probably rest from a game, but you have to go all or nothing in a situation like this?
Yeah, you do. And I think the reality is that our first game has put us in this situation, so that's okay. I mean, we knew for the rest of the tournament that it was going to come down to run rate should things go well, but also there's still 2 other games in the pool to be played as well. So first and foremost, we've got to try and get the 2 points.
Aaron, you mentioned potentially discussing rejigging the batting order, but is there also a case maybe for someone like Mitchell Starc, who hasn't really opened the bowling much, if they swing on offer, to take the first or second overs?
Yeah, it'd be nice to know going into a game if it was going to swing or not. That'd make things a lot easier in selection and things like that. But like I said earlier, we'll discuss all options leading in. Obviously, for us to win, we need to restrict Afghanistan or get off to a really solid start. And the foundation is the most important thing in doing that. It's to be able to walk out and start, and if you bat first, if you walk out and think we need to get 250 and you go all guns blazing, you could leave yourself really vulnerable there. So regardless of whether we bat first, bowl first, the foundation, like the first 3 or 4 overs, is still key to being successful, I think, because that then allows guys on the back of that to play their natural game and maybe be overly aggressive at certain times as well with bat and ball, searching for wickets or searching for quick runs. So the first couple of overs is always the most important.
Just a slightly more specific question on Stark. He hasn't really, there's only one game, I think the game against New Zealand, he opened the bowling. But other than that, a few other sides have found swing, but Australia views Stark a bit differently. I just was curious about the thinking there.
Yeah, we feel as though that he's got a really important role through the middle part of the innings, and particularly with Adam Zampa, who's been really good for a long time now. So in T20, well, same as one-day cricket, if you don't get wickets through that middle phase of the game, you are incredibly vulnerable at the back end, regardless of who's bowling. You could have the best two ever, and if you've got two set batters, it's going to be incredibly difficult to contain them. So it's been a little change in Mitch's role to be pushing harder through them middle overs and almost going towards the back end of the power play so that we can try and get a wicket there to expose a middle order right on the back of that. That's the only reason for it.
Aaron, obviously with all of the, I suppose, the micro stuff around your hamstring and the net run rate equation and all that kind of stuff, is there any room in your head for the bigger picture and I know we talked earlier in the year about wanting to get to the MCG and what a big stage that would be and a great achievement for you in the context of your career. Is there any room in your head for that at the moment, given that the game's tomorrow?
Not at all. No, I honestly haven't thought about anything past tomorrow. Like you said, with so many numbers and scenarios flying around, if you're not paying full attention to that, it's incredibly difficult to focus on your main job.
And just to follow up in terms of what was mentioned before about Mitch Stark, is that a little bit as well about getting? I mean, obviously, Pat and Josh have taken the new ball, the challenge that they present to opening batters versus getting Stark bowling to middle order guys when for a long time he's been bowling at openers. Is that part of it as well?
Yeah, a little bit. We feel as though all three of them have got great capabilities with the new ball, and Mitch has been as good as anyone of all time with the new ball over his career. So the fact that his role's slightly changed isn't a reflection on anything else apart from just restructuring sort of the power play, and then that probably the first 10 overs actually trying to continue to press for wickets. So it just comes down to trying to navigate that 20 overs as best we can with an eye of taking middle order wickets.
And just one on Cameron Green. Is he if he were to come in and play tomorrow? Would you know exactly what role he'd be playing, or is that one of the other things that's still a variable at the moment?
That's purely a discussion for later on when we sit down and go through all the scenarios. I'm sure that there'll be 20 different teams talked about, in combinations with bat and ball, and we'll go with whatever we feel is the best matchup for Afghanistan.
Last two on the floor.
Is it different, Aaron, carrying a hamstring injury into a T20 game as opposed to one of the longer formats? The motions and activities you have to do, a bit more explosive?
I wouldn't say more explosive. Being captain and fielding at slip for a while, then sort of going to cover or something like that, there's not a huge amount of high-speed efforts. There's obviously acceleration and decels, which can put some pressure on. But aside from that, I don't think it changes a huge amount. I think running between wickets is very similar when you bat with Davey Warner in one-day cricket or T20 cricket. So I don't think that changes too much.
And how are you with the numbers as a mathematician? If you're out there and it's the 8th over and X amount of wickets have fallen, how are you going to go with all of that?
Not bad when it's in cricket terms. When anything else, maths wasn't my best subject at school. But so one thing that I love is when they have a runs per over required when you're chasing, because sometimes it comes up on the screen and it might say 60 off, 57 runs off 36 balls, and to try and quickly work out what that looks like in runs per over, it's not my strength. But if it says on the board you need 11 and over or 6 and over, then you can start to develop a game plan around that rather than having to worry about doing the maths and then. So it's never been my strong point, but in cricket terms, it's not bad.
It might not say that tomorrow with all the other permutations.
It doesn't matter. You can control what you can, and if we get ourselves into a good enough position, we can try and push.
Aaron, I know you said to Dan you're not thinking too much about your long-term future, but if you feel like you're just on the borderline of being able to play, will Well, the permutations of what it could mean for your T20 career, will that make it harder or easier to make a sacrifice?
Won't make it harder one bit. If I feel like it 1% would be compromising the side's performance, I won't play.
Hey Finchy, what do you need to do this afternoon? And do you need to convince yourself, or do you need to convince the medicos?
The coach, the medico, everyone's on the same page. To be fair, we chatted about it earlier about doing enough to know that in my mind and in their minds that it's not a risk to play, but also at the same time not doing too much that you compromise a long-term injury. If we were to get through to a semi-final, that would be at stake, risk missing that if that was the case. So it's a fine line. I think the medicos are sitting down and doing that stuff at the moment, and they're unbelievable at their job. So whatever they decide, or whatever they think that I need to do, I'll do it to the best. And if I can't, I won't play.
So is there any sort of plan to maybe look at just trying to get fit for a semi-final if you make it?
Well, we're not there. So, I mean, if we're in a position that it was already guaranteed, I think that would be a conversation to be had. But the reality is we've put ourselves in this position, so you can't really wait for second chances or rely on other teams. You've got to go out and try and do it yourself. And like I keep saying, if that means that I don't play, I'm perfectly comfortable with that if I think it's going to compromise the team in any way.
Sorry, you just said that essentially you would leave up to the others. Is there any scenario where you would just put your hand up and even if they said you're right to play, that you would say, no, I don't think I should?
Yeah, 100%. If I don't feel confident in my hamstring, then I won't play. And that might be in the first effort that I do today, it might be in the last one. If I feel any pain or anything like that, I won't play.
Just one final one on Afghanistan. Looks like Rashid will probably play now. Yep. How does that change things?
No, we always prepare for anything that they've got, and Rash is obviously as good as anyone in the world, so I don't think that changes how we go about it a huge amount. The guys still do all their planning and preparation, which most guys have played. Well, I reckon everyone would have played him a number of times over the years in either BBL, IPL, things like that. So each guy will have their own individual plans, but yeah, I certainly wasn't expecting him to miss. I'd be surprised if he did.
No request on Zoom, so we'll close
Thanks,
it at
guys.
that. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Have a good one.